Sterilizing, buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they war. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slide, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See their shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
It is. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Rock the Vote, right here on UCY.TV. And I'm your host for the next hour. And, people say sometimes, not sometimes, too oftentimes, I say, what are you up to? I'm bored. And I don't understand how that's even possible. That's one thing that always amazed me. Or I ask people, what are you thinking about? Nothing. And I've never been able to wrap my head around that either. What do you mean you're not thinking it? You got to be thinking of something. No. Well, what, are you just empty shells standing there or what? How the hell can you be awake and not be thinking about something? And how can you be awake and be bored? I have no idea. Those two things have always threw me. I never understood how anybody can be bored or how anybody can not be thinking about something. I'm just very happy I'm not one of those people. Very happy. Because if I ever say, so what are you thinking about? Oh, nothing. Slap me, please. I don't think that's possible. It ever happened to me. But anyways, I got a call early this morning from a gentleman, and he was pretty jacked up. He was telling me about the Owen Sound newspaper front page. And Owen Sound's about 50 miles north of me. And this is the biggest town around here, and it's whopping 20,000 people. Look out. In fact, it's the biggest town in about 90 miles from here. So I go, what's up? He says, I got to take the kids to school. I just want to tell you, local OPP charged with breach of trust and obstruction. Okay. I says, Michael going to court tomorrow? And he goes, yeah, they're in court today too. I go, what do you mean it's not scheduled? He says, well, they're in court putting in motions about the cops lying on the stand and the breach of trust and too long the delay in court and a whole bunch of other stuff trying to quash this stupid obstruction charge. So I thought this had something to do with Michael and them, and it doesn't. But it's another one of these strange police stories, Owen Sound, the OPP Professional Standards Bureau has charged a detachment commander of Bruce Peninsula OPP and an acting staff sergeant of Grey County OPP, each with breach of trust and obstructing justice stemming from an ATV collision at Cape Croker in 2011. A news release issued Wednesday afternoon said Staff Sergeant Wayne Thompson, a 29-year veteran, and Acting Staff Sergeant Kevin Muir, an operations manager with 17 years experience or service, were charged in and are scheduled to attend the Ontario Court of Justice in Owen Sound on August the 10th. Both have been suspended. I love this about the cops, right? Both have been suspended with pay as required under the Police Services Act. The charges stem from a collision in 2011 involving off-road vehicles, which left one person with serious injuries. The news release said information provided to police prompted an investigation which commenced this past May into potential wrongdoing. The incident occurred while both members were off duty, the release said. The OPP will not comment further to protect the integrity of the ongoing court process and any disciplinary matters that may result. And this is the cops are the cops, and we're us, and they're them. And the story really doesn't say anything, but that's the normal procedures when police are involved in something. What are you going to do? So we're going back to court tomorrow for Michael Schmidt over in Walkerton, Ontario. So if you're by that direction, slide by. It's going to be an all-day affair again. And this is about the raid in October 2015. It should have been discharged a long time ago, but they are absolutely desperate. They're, grasping at straws now. 23 years later, they're just making a bigger mess of this than they did at the beginning. What they could have done was sit down at the kitchen table with a couple of farmers and come to a reasonable conclusion that these people are not selling anything to the general public. They're not distributing anything to the general public. This is a completely in-house deal, of which the justice in 2010 who acquitted Michael on all 19 charges said everyone has the absolute right to do. And that in a private matter like this, the government has no business sticking their nose in it. So they're desperate, and they're doing some very nefarious nonsense, like allowing, when it's a proven thing, which should have been busted right out of the gates, because when that officer went to the justice to secure a search warrant for the farm, I wish I knew where that was. It might be on my other computer. I'd like to read that someday. I'll have to dig that out. But, the justice, he said, we want a search warrant. Why? Well, we want to know what's going on. Well, why don't we just go ask them? Well, yeah, but we'd really like a warrant. But what you're asking for doesn't require a warrant. You can't justify a warrant. So then the cop gets on about, well, they're anti-government. And that's no cause for a warrant. Well, they're free men on the land. Says who? Well, they must be. They're anti-government. Then this went on, and the justice kept, saying to this guy, you're not giving me anything that would indicate there's a necessity for a warrant. And then he started coming up with violence and all this kind of stuff, and eventually the justice wrote a warrant. But it was all total lies. So you acquired your warrant in order to make the raid under false pretenses, outright lies, in order to gain the warrant to raid the farm. Now, you raided the farm using information that was incorrect in order to get the warrant. And then you raided the farm, which you shouldn't have been there in the first place because there should never have been a warrant issued. And now you're trying to charge Michael and others for obstructing those who shouldn't have been there in the first damn place, because they gained the warrant using false information. And the judge, it was brought up to the judge last Friday, and he just made some lame excuses and drive on. So I think Michael and them are in there today. We had a long discussion about that last Friday, what was going on in the court. So I think Michael's back there today, or at least Enos, when he called me this morning about this other police matter, said that they were in court today doing motions. So I imagine they're looking for motions just to quash the whole damn thing. And I doubt it works because, like I said, El Governmento is in a very precarious position themselves now, because if they can't nail Michael, then all of the damage and harm and cause and costs that have been done to Michael and his family and those who are members of the farm is going to get damned expensive. So they're desperate, and it's showing, and they're cracking all over the place, and they ain't got a leg to stand on, but they just keep coming. And because they, unlike the defendants, have a bottomless pit of cash, your cash. And that's, I think, what really should tick people off, is the fact that it's your money, and you're paying for it with interest that's being used to harm these people who have caused nobody any harm. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Now, here's a story. This is Midwestern Ontario, or Southern Ontario, and it's a story about windmills. And I phoned these guys, Blackburn News, your local news network, and they put out online news for Chatham, Kent, London, Midwestern Ontario, Sarnia, Lambton, and Windsor, Essex. And all of these places have been inundated with windmills. So I seen this story the other day, and it just made me not angry. It made me want to puke, maybe. The title of the story is cheaper cost of generating wind doesn't mean break on your hydro bills. Well, that's a screwed up statement right there. Cheaper cost? It's the most expensive generation there is, wind. And they make the headline, cheaper cost of generating wind. It goes on, and I called this outfit, Blackburn News, excuse me, to tell them I want a rewrite of this story. And I better get it, because if you want fake news extraordinaire, this little piece is fake news on steroids, if you will, right from the headline, cheaper wind generation. This is a very short story as well. The Crown Corporation that operates the Electricity Market Ontario says, well, right there, that's impossible. The Crown Corporation that operates the Electricity Market Ontario says, well, the Crown Corporation can't say anything. It's a bloody piece of paper. It doesn't say Bill or Susan of the Crown Corporation that operates. Now, Bill or Susan could have said something, but the Crown Corporation can't say anything. This is the mind screwing they've done to people. Well, look, honey, it says here the Crown Corporation operates the electricity market says, really? That the amount of wind generation in Southern Ontario is up over the last few months. Really? And the people reading this never seem to notice that nobody said anything, because the Crown Corporation can't say anything. There isn't a name of man or woman in there. Nothing got said, because the Crown Corporation can't speak. But don't expect your bill to go down as a result. Chuck Farmer, the Director of Public Affairs, i.e. liar, with the Independent Electricity System Operator, says 1,880 gigawatt hours were generated in March and April compared to 1,260 gigawatt hours during the same period last year. Farmer says the cost of producing wind energy is cheap. That's why I called him a liar. It ain't cheap. It's expensive. But he doesn't say that. He says it's cheap and allows more flexibility to meet either higher or lower demand and avoid interruptions. Wrong again, Bill. Is it Bill Farmer? Chuck Farmer. Wrong again there, Chuck. Wind energy is actually controllable, says Chuck. Wrong again, Chuck. So when the wind is blowing and those generators are working, we're actually able to dispatch those in order to manage the generation so that it balances the demand and that provides a lot of value to our electricity system, Farmer says. Wrong again, Chuck. Let's look at your statement for a second. Wind energy is actually really controllable. No, it's not. Where the hell would you come up with a stupid statement like that? It is not controllable in the least. So when the wind is blowing and those generators are working, we're actually able to dispatch those in order to manage the generation so that it balances with demand and that provides a lot of value to our electrical system. Well, who are you talking about the electrical system? You're not talking about the customers. And you've privatized our electricity, so I guess that line could be correct if you know what you're reading, and provides a lot of value for our electricity system. You must be talking about the investors, because you're certainly not talking about the end user. That's for damn sure. So we'll take that for that. And really controllable. Wrong. We have a huge problem here in Ontario. One, and this is coming out of the mouths of multiple engineers, because I've been to a fair number of their meetings, and I've asked them the questions, and they gave me the answers. They also, the engineers, the meetings I went to, all of them, not a few of them, but all of them agree that this electricity system that we have in Ontario now is based on a complete and total fraud. But when you talk to these guys, you say, well, why don't you speak up? Let me guess. You're worried about your pensions. Well, yeah. How sad is that? How freaking sad is that? But that's what they're worried about. They're worried about their pensions. Even though they agree that it is a total fraud, they won't speak up about it. Now, you can't dispatch wind. Okay, one of the problems in the engineering meetings I was at is that, first of all, the neutral wires, which help balance the load, right, are at least half too small for what they should be for wind, because our system isn't set up for that. Okay, we had coal plants, hydroelectric plants, and nuclear plants. That's what we run our system on. Now, the nuclear plants run basically full bore all the time. You can't run a nuclear plant like a car where you can take your foot off the gas and put it on the brake. It don't work that way. A nuclear plant just runs. So you got to balance the lines. You put too much energy into the lines, you're going to blow the system. So the point of the coal and the hydroelectric dams is they were there for load balancing. So the nukes produce X percentage of the power. The rest comes out of hydroelectric dams, and the smallest part was coming out of the coal plants, because you can ramp up and down a coal plant almost instantaneously. And that keeps the load balanced. Then they come in with these dumbass windmills and gave them first right to the lines, okay? Because the investors want to make a bunch of money out of it. And it's the most expensive form of electricity that we got. So when the wind blows and there's a big wind come through, and the windmills have first call on the lines, even though they're the most useful form of electricity we got. And it's very expensive. The investors want their money. So we had all kinds of problems with load balance. And then you have the grounding rods to dump this stuff. That was the second backup. You've got the ground, the neutrals, but as the engineers said, they're at least half too small, and puts all kinds of pressure on the system. So the guys down at the coal plants, they're all closed now. We have no coal plants in Ontario now, but when they first started kicking up these windmills, I was talking to a guy who knows an operator down at the coal plant, and he said, this is nuts. Because they were scrambling, trying to keep the load balanced. Because all of a sudden, wham, a whole pile of energy comes into the lines that you weren't expecting. One, you don't need. Two, and everybody's got to jump because wind gets first access to the lines, even though it's useless in most cases. And it's not really even what you call power. You know, when I look at power is something you can call on when you need it. Wind just shows up when it wants, and had everybody dancing. But this article does, I think, explain a few things that I've noticed lately, because they've closed the coal plants down, and they said, we will go with wind, but they closed the coal plants, and then they put a bunch of gas plants in. All right? You got to have a load balance. And, but what I've noticed now, well, we'll just get going here. We'll do the rest of this real quick. Farmer says consumers get some breaks with wind power, but it doesn't have much of an impact on lowering rates. What do you mean much of an impact on lowering rates? It has every impact on raising rates, you dumb piece of garbage. But then it says you're director of public affairs. So public is everything owned by the government. Affairs is business. So you're the director of government business propaganda or outright lies. And that's what Chuck Farmer's job is. Because you couldn't have put this on a piece of paper otherwise, if your job wasn't to lie to the people. When we're generating from one resource type, such as wind, which is non-emitting, that means that something else isn't running, and so you do get offsets in the system in that situation, Farmer says. Which has nothing to do with anything. Farmer says the increased wind output means cleaner air because wind turbines don't produce emissions. No, but they do produce fires and massive freaking oil leaks. But we won't worry about that. And they kill a shitload of birds. And they drive the deer and the animals off the land because they can't stand it. So there's so much excess energy running around in the air, the animals won't go there. I remember the farm down by Godrich. It used to be heavily populated with deer and birds, and they said they just all disappeared when these things fired up. The energy that we generate from wind facilities don't create any emissions, and if we're generating increased energy from wind, that means we're not utilizing other parts of our energy generating system, such as emitting resources like natural gas, says Farmer. Now, they just use basically the same sentence twice, because the sentence above it says we're generating from one resource type, such as wind, which is not emitting, and that means that something else isn't running, and so you do get offsets, and then the other sentence. And then down here it says, Farmer says wind power accounts for about 11% of the province's generating capacity. Well, that's wrong. But it depends how you read it. Depends what you understand. accounts for 11% of the province's generating capacity, not generation, not 11% of the electricity generated, but 11% of the province's generating capacity. Now, in reality, wind in Ontario provides approximately 1% of the electricity in Ontario, not 11%. So what they do is they take the generating capacity, that is a windmill, all of the windmills in the province, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, running at full capacity, would amount to 11% of the capacity of, or not capacity, the total generation. But because it's dependent on the wind, like right now, there is no wind. It's dead quiet out here. So you can bet the windmills ain't turning. So you don't have electricity. So this idea that we want to move completely to renewable energy is meaning that we want to have a ridiculous electrical system because you won't have power. Simple as that. And the other pathetic thing about this wind, you know, it was sold as free, green electricity. There's nothing free about it. There's nothing green about it. And it's not even really much about electricity about it. It's not a power source. You know, you cannot produce the steel to build the towers and the parts of the windmills with wind. You can't do it. Without the coal plants and that, you can't make steel. So it's not really even power. I just call them a bunch of whirligigs stuck up in the fields that are irritating the snot out of people and the animals. So I called Blackburn News like the day before yesterday. I went through this shit with them. And so I want to rewrite on this because this is basically from beginning to end an outright lie. Everything in it's a lie. He goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, read the frickin' headline. Where did the headline? Is Paul Pedro wrote this thing? Is he there? No, but I'll get him to call you. Good plan. Of course, I haven't got a call yet. I said, let me read the headline. Now, where did Paul get this headline from? It says cheaper cost of generating wind doesn't mean break on bills. Where did he come up with this cheaper cost of generating wind? Well, let's go to the first sentence. The Crown Corporation that operates says the amount of wind generation in Southern Ontario is up over the last years, and it's cheap, and yada, yada, yada. So he just took what Chuck Farmer gave him and ran with it. Now, I know Paul Pedro, by the look of this thing, knows nothing whatsoever about generating electricity. He knows nothing about renewable energy. He knows nothing about wind. He just let Chuck spew on a piece of paper. And I most definitely intend to get a rewrite on this. And that's something else I used to encourage people to do, and I'll do it again today. When you read crap in the news, just don't go, that's crap. Get on the horn and call these clowns out. Because silence is consent. If you don't call them out, you're not putting their feet to the fire, and they'll just do and say whatever the hell they want. Because nobody's complaining about it. We got to get proactive here somehow. You know, wind energy is actually really controllable. It is not the least bit controllable. It is totally dependent upon the wind. But when I read that, when I was talking to Blackburn News, I said that one sentence there, okay, has got my interest. Because when I go north, it's just windmills. And what I've noticed lately is that most times we go through there, about 60 to 70% of these windmills are not turning. I'm thinking, why are they not turning? Why are 30% turning and 60, 70% of them are not turning? Why is that? Well, likely because the coal close the coal plants down. And you're running with the nukes and you can't balance the load. So if you just let all these windmills fire up when it's windy, you're going to overload the system. And it would seem to me that's the reason so few of these things are turning anymore. Because they can't just let them all come on the system at once. It's not easily controllable. It's next to impossible to control the damn things. And people are having all kinds of problems. We've had more blackouts than we ever had in the past by a long shot. And so anyways, I talked to the Blackburn News and, I said, I want to rewrite. And Paul's not in right now, so he said, I'll get Paul to call you. But of course, Paul hasn't called yet. And I haven't had a chance to call back in there. I probably won't tomorrow because I'm going to be in court all day. But unless I can get a call in early in the morning and see what happens with these guys. But this is one of our major problems, is that this stuff is allowed to slide. Then there's, you can go through stories all day long, and you'll see the same thing. Fake News City. Here's a picture that really makes me want to puke. I'm going to just throw this in the chat, just because it makes me puke. We got the premier of the province, who's lesbian, and her husband, who I guess is a lesbian, and Wynne is kissing her daughter on the cheek, who is in school at the young age of 33. I'm going to read this. On this day, the most powerful woman in Canada was just another proud mom. Premier Kathleen Wynne took a break from Politicking Friday, that's called lying, to deliver a deeply personal convocation address at Ryerson University ceremony she would have attended even if she weren't the keynote speaker. Now, Ryerson University, I like. Ryerson University had a radio station there. I don't know if they got their license back or not, but the radio station, the student radio station at the university, was starting to talk some serious stuff. And I don't know if it's just me or what, but I had a friend down there working in Toronto, and he came back up. This was about Christmas time, around Christmas. I don't know how long ago, 5, 6 years ago. And he came up and said, I heard you on the radio. What do you mean you heard me on the radio? And he says, where the hell did you hear me on the radio? And he said, FM, whatever. I said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Why would I be on the radio down in Toronto? And it turned out that they were, one of the guys from Ryerson had come up to a meeting my friend had put on. We had a bunch of speakers, and I was speaking about wind energy. And they were playing it at Ryerson. And it was shortly thereafter, very shortly after, that they were going to pull the plug on Ryerson. They did pull it for a while. I don't know if they got it back or not. But Ryerson University as well. Our education system here in the West came from Prussia, because the powers that be were so impressed with Prussia, and I couldn't figure out how they managed to get their people to do what they were doing. In other words, whatever the government told them to do, they would do it, no questions asked. So Ryerson was actually one of the guys that went over to Prussia to study their education system. And now Ryerson has a statue because he was involved in this new great education program, which is just a complete and total indoctrination. Just believe whatever the government tells you, never buck them, and so on and so forth. So it seems fitting that Premier Kathleen Wynne is giving her keynote address at Ryerson University. I am brimming with pride for my youngest daughter, Maggie, who took considerable risk, yes, and showed extraordinary determination to come back to school a second time around to study something completely different, said the Premier. To the delight of her mother, Maggie Cowperwaite, 33, is a member of this year's graduating class in collaborative nursing at Ryerson. I'm not only standing here as a premier, I am simultaneously sitting beside all of you, the mothers, fathers, spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, aunties, uncles, grandparents, and friends who have loved and cared for these fine young people. And I know there are hundreds of stories like Maggie's in this room today, said Wynne, who also has a son, another daughter, and 3 grandchildren, but not with her present husband, who is a lesbian, of course. But this kills me. I'm sitting beside all of you, the mothers, fathers, spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends. All of these words are being removed in legislation of which Wynne is involved in. Okay? They're taking mothers and fathers, these words out, because they don't want any parents. And here she is saying exactly the opposite of what she's doing. The friends that you make at college or university may well end up being the most important people in your life. I would know. I married one of mine, and then I married another. So first she married a guy that she went to university with, had some kids, and then she married a woman that she went to university with, apparently, according to the story. She quit referring to her former husband, Phil Cowperwaite, and her spouse now. What the heck? This is weird. I got to check this out. This is too strange. Her former husband, Phil Cowperwaite, and her now spouse, Jane Roundwaite. And we got Cowperthwaite, and Roundwaite, but they both end with W-A-I-T-E. What's the odds on that? Life is really uncertain, and that's okay. None of us has any idea what's ahead, just as I didn't, and you still don't, you dumb cow. Who knew a linguist would be a premier? And the first female premier, and the first gay one. You just never know. Well, we do know, and we're catching on here pretty quick now. With what could be construed as an allusion to this June 7, 2018 campaign, Wynne also avoided discussing electoral politics and implored the nursing graduates not to let naysayers bog them down. There will always be people seeking to exaggerate the dangers of a future we can only guess at. Those who tell us we will have less, share less, feel less secure, that the best days are behind us, they are wrong, she said, because I'm a UN puppet, and I just do as they tell me to do. So they tell me you're wrong, so I'm telling you you're wrong. Even though the plan is that we will have less, share less, and feel less secure. That is the plan. But they are wrong, says Wynne, who's a very happy little lesbian globalist UN puppet. There is no limit to what you can do and say and discover tomorrow, and it doesn't matter that none of us can see that far ahead. We can look back to when we granted women the vote or created universal health care or legalized same-sex marriage, the Premier said. Each time there were people saying those are the rules, they can't change. But the thing is that they already had, because there were people who were so determined to make the change happen, says Wynne. So as you leave today, look around and remember, draw on the resources of the community that surrounds you. You are rich in love and support. Always pay attention to what you see and hear so you can keep learning, and be patient with one another, and particularly with yourself. You know, always pay attention to what you see and hear. That's quite a bit different than what my grade 6 or 7 teacher said to me back in the 60s. What she said, you wouldn't pay attention to what you see and hear, but she said, believe nothing you read, see, or hear until you personally verify the information. Failure to do so opens your mind to accepting all manner of propaganda that right lies as truth. And politicians are liars by nature. And a lot of them don't know they're lying. I mean, this clown knows she's lying. But a lot of teachers have no idea that they're lying. They went through a indoctrination system, and they decided they wanted to be teachers, so they went to teacher college, and then the curriculum's handed to them, and it doesn't matter what that curriculum says, they will teach it. Plain and simple. So the teachers obviously believe what they read, see, and hear, and then they propagate that to the children without ever verifying the information, which makes school extremely dangerous for your brain. But that's the way they operate the system. And until we change that system, it's just going to get worse. And that's how that operates. So, what do we got going on here? Is this going to kick up or what? I'm just going to put this picture in because this broad is so miserably bent in the head and such a danger. Where did I go? Oh, it's hanging up here. And is so dangerous to the general public. And it goes right back to what Yuri Brezhnev said about never allowing a gay man or woman to gain political influence, because we know where that's headed. We see it every day. Now, I don't know what this video is here that Otto just put in. I'll watch it later. I thank you for putting it in. There's okay. Rock the boot. Okay, I'll take a look at that, because we most definitely have to rock the snot out of this thing because it's upside down. What else I want to talk about here? I still, I went and I looked at that up again, and I still couldn't find any mention of this Bill 89, which is basically how the government can further steal your children. Let's see if we can find anything half-assed interesting here for the last few minutes. Now that the fire in London, I saw a couple stories on it, and I breezed through it quickly, and I still don't know what the cause of that fire was, but there's something very wrong with that picture. Very wrong with that picture from where I'm sitting. Um, how could anybody be that incompetent? And again, that fire is one more indication that an airplane didn't bring down the towers, because the fire was enough to burn up the building in London, but I didn't see it melt into the ground or fall into its own footprint. And that fire, by the look of it, was much more of a fire than the fire that was caused by the so-called airplanes that ran into the towers. So it was just more. But I still don't like that tower fire. I don't know what the hell the point of that thing was. I don't know if it was some strange accident or somebody just said, you know what, we need another incident, and lit it up. I have no idea. These places are made out of concrete and steel, and you got some rugs and some curtains and some flooring, and your kitchen cupboards and that. And so, this is not a normal fire by any stretch of the imagination. Something don't smell right there. Let's see. There's not too much going on here. I'm quite happy though that we're going back to court tomorrow. I may just make up some paperwork or something to take over there and hand to the cops again and whatnot, just for the hellry of it. As this drags on, the cops are getting better all the time. I got something I want to put in, if I can find it. Yeah, there's some actually interesting stories in some of this stuff in the police magazine. I was actually researching the LGBTQ thing a little bit today, and looking at suicide rates and that. And you can't say anything negative about LGBTQ, but I got looking at their suicide rates and that, which are off the freaking charts. You go to all this trouble, you got at least a 50% chance to get whacking yourself. And that is not about and that is proof that is not about a gender identification thing. It is about a mental illness. There's no other way to describe it. It's mentally ill. And so now they're putting all this thing through that. The reason that they're whacking themselves, and that is because of discrimination. That's not even close to the truth, and it goes through here. It's talking about self-confidence and stuff, and depression and stuff, and you'd have to be awfully depressed and screwed up and have no self-confidence to say, I don't like this, I'm not happy with this, so I'm going to change genders. Now, that's just whack mode. So, and then 50% of them kill themselves or whatever. So now this bill at 60 or 89, and some of these shows I've done and some of the stuff put on Facebook about, drag queens and that, teaching or reading stories to young children and making it fun. I want to be one of them, Mommy. It looks like fun. And the parents are taking the kids and exposing them to this shit. And, these people ain't normal. They're sick. They're mentally ill. So they're bringing the mentally ill to the schools and the streets and their LGBTQ parades and showing their sickness and encouraging others to join their sickness. So they too have a 50% chance of killing themselves. And now we have Bill 69, which comes straight out of the United Nations again, rights of the child, according to the state. And, they are looking for the kids who, I can just hear this in the school. Did anyone go to the library last Saturday to read the story? Oh, I went. It was so much fun. They're so cool. I want to be one of them. Do you, Billy? Yeah, I do. Well, we just happen to have a little dress for you here. Let's play Dress Up Billy today. Would you like to be a girl, Billy? I think so. It looks like fun. Well, Billy goes home, and I had so much fun. How was school today? Oh, they dressed me up like a girl today because remember, Mummy, when you took me to the library and all them cool people were there dressed up like girls? Daddy comes home from work. Say what? Oh, honey, Billy wants to be a girl. Shut up. No, really. I took him to the library, and now he wants to be a girl. Give it up. The guy's like 7. Smarten up. Billy, smarten up. I'll smack you one. I'm just playing that game out there. I don't want anybody to smack Billy, but I want somebody to smack the teacher. I want somebody to really smack the damn teacher because Bill 89 now encourages this crap in the school. The kid goes home. The parents say, sorry, Billy, you're young, you're confused, you saw something that you thought was cool. It's not. So just drive on. Billy goes back to the school. Did you tell your mom and dad about dressing up as a girl? Yeah, I did, but I don't like that idea. But you feel like a girl, don't you? He don't know how he feels. He's a little kid. And now, with Bill 89, the government has the right to walk into that family's home and take Billy because they're not showing him or they're not on side with him. And they can actually take little Billy now and fork him out to an LGBTQ house, foster home, where they'll care for little Billy and they'll teach little Billy how much it is fun to be a girl. But they don't tell little Billy or little Sally that you now have entered the world with a 50% chance of killing yourself. Because when you come to realize what you've done and you can't live with it, and you don't know how to get back to who you should be, you got a 50% chance of whacking yourself. And this stuff's being taught in the schools. This whole United Nations thing is nothing more than a damn death cult. They want to kill most of the population on the earth because the population on the earth is harming the earth. They don't want any procreation. So we're going to turn all little Billies into little girls, and all little girls into little boys. It's hard to procreate anything in those circumstances. But this is what's going on. And then they tell us, they pass legislation that we can't say boo crap about what's going on, because that would be hate speech. So I'm thinking maybe what I'll do before the LGBTQ parade, Pride Parade in my town, June next week, I guess, maybe next Saturday, June 23rd or whenever. What's the date today? 15th? So probably, next Saturday, I guess. I think I'll go and poster up some posters. Welcome to Pride. You have a 50% chance of suicide. Enjoy yourselves, because your life might be short. And that's not hate speech. That's a clinical fact. So they can't nail me on hate speech. They might not like what they see, but you can't call it hate speech because it's the same numbers that come out of the World Health Organization and upteen other health organizations. That you go down that road, and you got to stop and think why you went down that road. In the old days, you may have been depressed, You may have some psychological problems, but you put them in the background and you drive on. Now they look for that weakness. They look for that depression. They look for that lack of self-confidence. And then they move on it. So who are the haters? Those that recognize this as a health issue, a mental health issue? Or those that promote it, i.e. the government? Because if the government are promoting children to become involved in something that they know clinically has a 50% chance of suicide, then who are the haters? Those that question this lifestyle, or the ones that induce it upon the young, knowing the numbers and the problems that it creates? So the actions of the government regarding this LGBTQ thing, which is promoting it constantly and pumping money into it constantly, they are guilty of putting young people in a position at some point in their life where they're likely to kill themselves. And they're telling us that we have to accept it and that we can't say anything about it. And we have to go, isn't that a lovely dress Jimmy's wearing today? I mean, it's completely stupid. But they were in stupid times. And I was thinking, that Rome fell, and largely it largely fell because of Martin Luther, who was a Roman Catholic, who, when he got to Rome, saw Babylon and said, screw off, and started the Reformation, and Rome fell, and then Rome rose. And this is just a repeat of history. And we got to drive Rome back into the ground. We got to bury it deep enough it never raises its ugly head again. And take back our nations. And get back on the right track. All roads lead to Rome. If you've done any research, you end up over there. And we got to bury it. This is who brings forward with their little helpers. So we have inclusivity, multiculturalism, LGBTQ, everything that is completely abnormal has now been normalized. And now that we are here, we need to do basically what Martin Luther did. And he was a devoted monk, Catholic monk. But when he saw the reality, he called it out. And that's what we got to do. Call it out. We give no quarter to this. This is a spiritual, psychological war that we must and will win. So anyways, I got to go over to Walker-Morpher Day in court, which I always get a kick out of because it's silly, and see if we can't grind this judge into the ground once and for all. And then we'll be back here on Saturday. Oh, I got a show to do, and I don't know where the hell it is. Saturday at 1 o'clock, I'm going to be up here. There's no Find Hair Week. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, showtime.
Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they master, come rain.